Welcome back to another episode of Let's Feed Liam, a series where I make my friend's favorite foods turn into things that he can eat on his weight loss journey. Today we're making some delicious beef taquitos with a jalapeno ranch sauce. Both of these items are super high in protein, they're low calorie, very diet friendly, and they're delicious. So let's get into it. One of the things that I love the most about this recipe is that it has just 5 ingredients, and the food that you make from it can last you for an entire week. So the first ingredient we're gonna start off with is just an onion. We're probably only gonna use half of this because this is a big one. If you had, say, an onion of this size, probably only need one of these, right? So one onion isn't one onion. When a recipe says one, use your judgment. This is probably way too much for a pound of ground beef, which is the amount we're gonna use, or we can just use half, and that's what we're gonna do here. So if you want to shortcut the process of chopping an onion, there's like a billion YouTube videos out there that tell you, but the way that I do it is, you're gonna make a slice down the middle this way, but we're not gonna go all the way, right? We left this part intact. Then we're gonna make incisions this way. Now that we've held everything together, we can do this part, which makes it easy. There we go. This part here, hardest part of the entire recipe. Once you're done with it, everything else is smooth sailing. So we're gonna find our pan, which is right here. So here's a 12-inch frying pan, and you notice the difference is the lip on it, right? So this one curls up a little bit. This one has more of a squarish edge and comes up, right? Has a taller wall. I prefer this when I'm cooking with meats where there's gonna be a lot of volume because I don't want things to spill over. I don't want things to get too messy. You could get away with this. I'm sure you could. But as you'll see through this recipe, we're gonna be adding different ingredients to the ground beef, and I want something that I know is gonna be able to survive that.
Now are you letting the pan heat up before you put all this in?
What I'm about to do is I'm about to throw the onion in, but I want to throw it in on a hot pan so it starts to sear a little bit and sweat faster. There's this thing called like the Maillard reaction. Didn't go to culinary school, so I don't know what it's called, but it refers to a reaction between food and heat where it's like it crisps or browns on the outside quickly, and that's kind of what we favor in food. So never throw your ingredients into a cold pan, always throw them into a hot pan. They'll cook more evenly and you'll get that nice reaction from it. Pan here's warm, I can feel it, my hand's near it, and I feel the heat. We've got our diced onion. We're gonna throw it in. If you're ever curious if your pan's hot enough, you can always just take like a little bit of water and just flick it in there and see if it steams. We just want these onions to get a little soft. You don't wanna overcook them, but they're gonna be in here for a little bit just to see them change color and kind of get the room fragrant, you know? When the onions cook, they smell, they create a good aroma, and so that's kind of what you're watching for. So this is a 90-10 lean ground beef. That ratio, 90-10, 80-20, whatever, that refers to the amount of fat, right? So an 80-20 is a fattier beef than a 90-10. 90-10 is 10% lean. So if you're on a cut or you're trying to lose weight, you generally want to favor ground beef that has that lower fat percentage. It may not taste as juicy as the 80-20, but it's gonna keep your calories lower and make it easier to stay in a calorie deficit without sacrificing too much on like flavor and stuff like that. I don't know how like lean ground beef gets. I mean, like if there is like a 95.5 ground beef, probably the reason I don't see that in stores a whole lot is because it probably is a little bit too dry to cook. Like chicken is like 98% lean. It's super lean, which is why microwave chicken tastes so dry, because all the fat that should be in there to juice it up, it's not there. Chicken's just a lean meat. There's definitely a line, but I've used 93.7 ground beef and not had an issue. You just want to be mindful about the moisture level in the food you're making. Now, one of the reasons why we can get away with using leaner meat here is because we're about to add a ton of moisture. We're gonna add this ground beef in, but then later we're gonna add this salsa. And this salsa is gonna add so much moisture to the meat, it's gonna add a lot of volume and flavor and shortcut a lot of the work of like chopping tomatoes and chopping whatever else would go in the salsa, you know? All right, so we've got our onions in here. You can see they're starting to change color a bit, they're sweating. We're gonna take our ground beef. I'm gonna turn the heat up now that we've got more in the pan. I'm not as worried about burning these onions now that they've got some company. All right, so I'm breaking this up just a little bit just to get it beginning to cook. Now that it's broken up like that, I'm gonna do something that many people forget to do or fail to do, which is season. I've talked about seasonings before, but if you want just the easiest 4 to 5 seasonings that are gonna make everything taste better and not overpower it, you do 5. You do salt, pepper, paprika, garlic powder, onion powder. You don't have to do all of those. 3 or 4 of those will suffice. Don't just do salt and pepper. Be better than that. Adventure into some other kind of flavor profile. So we're gonna throw a bit of salt on here. Now we're gonna throw pepper. Salt and pepper just kind of like you're swimming in the kiddie pool. You gotta start there. You gotta put some training wheels on, but you also have to take your training wheels off. All right, so we already have onion in there. So I'm gonna pass on the onion powder. I'm not gonna use it this go. And instead I'm gonna use garlic powder and paprika. There are so many seasonings out there and like people selling seasonings and all. I don't mind that, but I just want you to know Pretty much every seasoning you've ever liked that's on the market, like, oh, this is a special rub seasoning. If it's for red meat or chicken, it is guaranteed some variation of garlic powder, onion powder, salt, pepper, paprika. It's almost invariably that flavor profile. So just be mindful, seasonings can be a lot simpler if you work with these 5. I'm adding a lot of seasoning, a lot more than most people would. Like, look at how much color you're getting out of that beef. The reason why I'm doing that is that, this beef, this is a pound of ground beef, right? This is not just one serving. This is probably 8 servings out of this batch that we're making. So one of the benefits of these taquitos is they store well in the fridge. They're easy to reheat. You can microwave them. I prefer to oven heat mine a little bit or use like a toaster oven. Yeah, this is smelling so fragrant. I'm gonna add a little bit more garlic powder. You can add red pepper flakes if you want a little bit more heat. That'll add some spice really quickly, and it's not usually going to conflict with a lot of your other flavors. When I say that those are like the 5 seasonings that I like, that's my personal preference as someone that cooks every single day. So, it's not the only way to season your food, but it's one of the simplest. Salt, pepper, and then some variation of garlic powder, onion powder, and paprika is going to get the job done almost every single time for a recipe like this. We got our beef almost done cooking, and now that it's almost done, we're gonna add in about half a container of this salsa. I'm using mango peach salsa, but it's not the only kind of salsa you can use. Any kind of salsa you like, if you want really spicy habanero salsa, you go for it. So you see now what's happening here in the pan. That hot sizzling is going down, right? Because we have more moisture. It's cool a little bit because this kind of came out of the fridge, but it's gonna heat up really quick. And you see how this mixture is forming. Our onions and our tomatoes and the mangoes and the peaches that are in here are just gonna add tremendous flavor to this. This is already, just within a few seconds of me adding it, nearly done. So I'm gonna turn the heat down. I don't wanna overcook this. Like I said before, microwave chicken sucks. And the reason why it sucks is not because chicken is innately bad to reheat, it's just that it doesn't have enough fat for the reheating process to retain a lot of the moisture. When you melt a fat, when you put butter in a pan, when you heat up a steak, it gets juicy, it gets dripping, it gets full of moisture, right? So the same thing's happening here. We're adding a bunch of moisture into this, not just so that we can reheat it later, it's because it tastes better, but it does have that added benefit that you're saying. It makes it easier to reheat without worrying about losing that moisture. So like, look at this. You can see how this is just dripping with moisture. It's in a perfect position. All right, so we're gonna take the heat off now. This is cooked pretty well evenly. So now we're ready to prepare it, and this is the easiest part. So I have a package here of low-carb tortillas. They're called carb-balanced tortillas. There's lots of brands that make these. I am not a ketogenic person, and there's a lot to be said about why the keto diet is not like the move. You don't want to strip all the carbs out of your diet, you're going to be miserable. But if you can reduce them, you're going to reduce the number of calories that you're consuming because carbs are really calorically dense, right? Like I think if you get a tortilla from Chipotle, it's like what, 150, 200 calories? It might be more, it might be like 300 calories. It's a big number, and like, sure, we need some carbs in our life, that's okay. But look at this. This tortilla, 70 calories, 6 grams of protein. I mean, that's nearly a 10% ratio between your protein and your calories. That's really good. That's on par with this ground beef in terms of macros. Like, it's pretty close. So I love finding foods that have good calories and protein because it means you don't have to worry as much about restricting yourself and not eating them. The path forward in a diet is not about like playing this chess game where you're like, how much can I suffer and still like not give in? It's about finding foods you genuinely enjoy and relying on them.
Now, what kind of meal would this be considered? A bulking, cutting, maintaining?
Any meal, when you're considering whether or not it's good for bulking or cutting, I would lean away from that question. There's a better answer to it. The answer is, what is the relationship between the number of calories in the meal and the protein in the meal? You want something that has a good proportion of both. So let's say a meal that has 750 calories and 75 grams of protein, that's a great ratio. It's about 10% of the calories that you're having are going towards protein. That's awesome, right? For that meal, the question of whether or not it's for bulking or cutting is, how much volume do I want to have? You want to make sure that the foundation of the thing that you're eating has a really good balance between calories and protein, and then the bulking cutting question is, how much do I eat? That means, if you're following this, that virtually any meal that you make that has that good balance can be used for both. So with these taquitos, you're going to get like 300 something calories and like 30 plus grams of protein per taquito. Eating 1 or 2 of those is going to be ideal if you're on a cut, and if you're bulking, have 5 or 6. But you're starting with something that has a lot of protein, has a good relationship from calories to protein, meaning it's going to be safe for either kind of diet. Just check your volume. So let's put our taquitos together. I'm taking some low-fat cheese here. This is just a shredded Mexican cheese blend. Just find one that's lower in fat. Your calories are going to be a little bit better. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this mixture I'm gonna put it in the tortilla. About 1 serving spoon size is enough for a taquito, I found, because you don't wanna risk it overflowing or like, falling out. So we're gonna take these, each of these, and I'm just gonna tuck it in right here towards the edge, and then roll. The only thing about this recipe that's not perfect is like, there's a little bit of cheese that falls out, but easy to repurpose for your next roll if you know what you're doing.
Now, how many taquitos does this recipe make?
That is a good question. I think it's close to 10. Obviously, it depends on how much onion you use and how much other stuff you add in. But with a standard like pound of ground beef, that's about what you're gonna get. Last step, we're gonna throw these bad boys in the air fryer. Give them a little spin in that just to toast up these tortillas, make the texture really nice. All right, so this air fryer gives me room for 4. I'm gonna slide it in. And this is the kind of the thing you can just sort of eyeball. I'm gonna put mine at like 380 for 6 minutes. Might do less. I'll check it at like 2, but you're just looking for a nice little golden crust on the tortillas, then they're good to go. We've got the taquitos, they are done. As you see here, there's just a little bit of a crust on the top. I'm gonna take one of these. I'm just gonna split it apart because I want you to see what it's like on the inside. Look at that. Got my little spicy ranch sauce here. You can use whatever dipping sauce you like, but this is an easy one. Cheers. It goes hard. We get in there.
That onion, that sauce.
Let's go. A little over 30 grams of protein per one of these rolls. I could eat like 6 of them, 180 grams. That's a lot, but that would set me up for the day. They're delicious, super easy to make. You can store these in any kind of food storage container in the fridge. Just reheat them either in the microwave or in the oven for a few minutes, and you're good to go. Till next time.